Hello. Hello.
Hello, sir. You are on line,
Yeah.
sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yeah. Can I unmute myself?
Yeah, of course, sir. You can do, sir.
Am I visible?
We could see you, sir.
But I couldn't.
We could see you, sir.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone gathered here for day 4, session 2 of the 7-day national level online faculty development program on recent trends in English studies. To initiate our gathering with the moment of invoking the Lord's blessing, I would like to invite Mrs. J. Rajkamal Petro ma'am to lead us in the opening prayer. Welcome you, ma'am.
Prayer. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we praise you and glorify you as you have created and planned this day for us, and you have bring it into our life. Lord, we thank and pray for the management team of the institution. Let NMCP be a blessing to share education and you in their boundaries. We pray for the organizers to see the fruits of their plannings and efforts to be a beneficiary one. We surrender the resource person of this day, Dr. S. Prabhakar. Bless him and let him share his knowledge with us. We pray for all the participants to gain a valid insight and let it be useful to their career in future. Let these 7 days be a meaningful one for all. In Jesus' mighty name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am, for setting a reflective and meaningful tone for our event. As we get into the sacred verses, I heartily invite Mrs. T. Eunice Solomon, Assistant Professor of English, Nazareth Margoschis College at Pilayanmanai, to guide us through the Bible reading. We welcome you, ma'am.
Today's reading, Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 to 12. Ask and it will be given to you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks the door will be opened. Is there anyone among you who, if your child asks for bread, would give a stone, or if the child asks for a fish, would give a snake? If you then, who are evil know how to give good gift to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. For this is the law and the prophets. Here ends the lesson.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing the enriched passage with us. And now I heartily welcome our next segment of the program. I would like to invite Dr. M. Beulah Hemlata, convener of this faculty development program and research head, Nazareth Margoschis College at Pilayanmanai, to deliver the welcome address. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Christie. On behalf of the PG and Research Department of English of Nazareth Margoschis College at Pilayanmanai, it is my distinct honor to welcome the esteemed resource person and academic community to Day 4, crafted to provide valuable insights in recent trends in English studies. A warm and gracious welcome to our distinguished guest, Dr. S. Prabhakar, Dean of Languages, Professor and Head, Department of English, Manonmaniyam Sudaranar University, Tirunelveli. He is a trailblazer contributing significantly to the literary domain. We are fortunate to have you in our midst, and we eagerly anticipate your valuable thoughts and guidance, sir. I also intend my welcome to our diligent coordinator, research guide, and assistant professor of English, Dr. Mary Stella, whose visionary leadership has been instrumental in shaping our FDP journey. I also extend a warm welcome to the head of the PG Department of English, Professor Jude Livingston, and the organizing committee members for shouldering the efforts. I extend my hearty welcome to all the enthusiastic academic community for enriching the learning experience which we aimed to achieve through this program. Together, let us make this faculty development program a vibrant and intellectually stimulating journey. Welcome you all again for joining with us on day 4, session 2. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. During the warmth of the welcome address, it's fitting to express our gratitude to Dr. Beulah Hemalata for successfully ushering us into this event. Thank you, ma'am. As we are eager to listen to our distinguished chief guest, before that, I'm very glad to invite Mr. J. Alagesh, research scholar of Nazareth Margoschis College, to deliver the chief guest introduction that befits the honor of our esteemed chief guest. We welcome you, sir.
Mr. Hello, dear organizer, can I start?
So shall we have a brief introduction about you, sir?
Yeah, please.
Alagesh, are you ready? Alagesh?
I shall introduce.
Start your introduction.
Yes, ma'am.
Start.
Yeah. So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am very much glad to have this wonderful chance to welcome and introduce the resource person, academician, expert in cultural studies, Dean of Indian and other languages, Monomuniam Sundarnar University, Professor and Head, Dr. S. Prabhakar sir, to this session. This is the greatest chance for all of us and the milestone in our college history for hosting this national level faculty development program for the first time in this academic year. Definitely, it is the greatest boon for all the research scholars, students, and all the participants for having such a vibrant literary academician, academic expert, cultural theorist, and eminent professor, Dr. S. Prabhakar sir, as a resource person for the session. Also, we all are very much eager for looking forward to him and waiting for his session. First of all, I would like to honor and welcome Dr. S. Prabhakar sir and thank him for accepting our invitation and request for joining with us in this online Zoom platform and sparing his valuable time today amidst of very busy schedule. Thank you so much, sir. Let me introduce the greatest personality and academic expert, Dr. S. Prabhakar sir, in this glorious session. Dr. S. Prabhakar sir started his academic career as a lecturer in senior scale, working at ST Hindu College, Nagarkoil, from the year 1991 to 2005. And he was promoted as a reader in English and working at the same ST Hindu College, Nagarkoil, from the year 2005 to 2006. In the year 2006, he joined in the university department and performed his career as a reader in the Department of English, Monomuniam Sundarnar University, Tirunelveli, from 2006 to 2009. From the year 2009 to present year, he is working as a professor and head in the Department of English, Monomuniam Sundarnar University, Tirunelveli. Also, he served as the prestigious controller of examination, Monomuniam Sundarnar University, Tirunelveli. During his period, he established various new amendments in the examination wing of our university, like semester mark statement with the QR code facility and online evaluation, and upgraded the system of publishing the result within the short span of time for outgoing students, and exam fee payment through online mode, etc. and etc. Presently, he was appointed as a Dean of Indian and other languages and serving as a professor and head prestigious Department of English, Monomuniam Sundarnar University, Tirunelveli. Also, he has guided for 19 research scholars and for 32 MPhil students. Recently serving as the research guide for 8 doctoral scholars and 1 postdoctoral fellowship also. He has edited 8 literary books and served as the co-author for 1 book and currently writing 2 new books also. Also, he has published 40 articles, more than 40 articles in the reputed journals and magazines, and presented more than 115 papers in the international and national level conferences and seminars. Such a marvelous academician with a numerous achievements and good records is definitely provided with a strong basement of education in his school and colleges. Of course, he pursued his UG degree BA English from Madurai Kamaraj University in the year 1987, completed PG degree MA English at the same Madurai Kamaraj University in the year 1989, and pursued MPhil degree from Trichy Paradasan University in the year 1990. Also completed another PG degree in journalism and mass communication at Madurai Kamaraj University in the year 1998. Also pursued his doctoral degree from Manomaniyam Sundara University in the year 2005. I am very much proud to mention here that he was the alumni of our university and prestigious Adityanar College of Arts and Science, Trichandur. These levels of education may be the reason behind his marvelous success and achievements. His thrust areas are cultural studies, comparative literature, Indian English literature, subaltern studies, and critical theories. Also, he is an empathetic teacher who believes in academic empowerment and intellectual liberation. So here, Fares is going to discuss about the topic, namely cultural materialism, which is very familiar to him. Once again, I welcome for this session, sir. Welcome you, sir. So I am very much here to say that such a marvelous and fruitful session, of course, an academic feast is awaiting for us. So this is what the short profile of Dr. S. Prabhakar, sir, Dean of Indian and Foreign Languages, MS University, Tirunelveli. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alaghi, sir, for your befitting chief guest introduction. Thank you, sir. As much anticipated moment arrives, I cordially invite Dr. S. Prabhaharan, Dean of Languages, Professor and Head, Department of English, the pride of Manomaniyam Sundaranar University, Tirunelveli, to deliver our esteemed and honorable chief guest address on the topic cultural materialism. Respected sir, we heartily welcome you.
Thank you very much. I hope I am audible and visible.
Yes,
The
sir,
most respected organizer of this program, the administrators of Nazareth Margoschis College, learned colleagues in the Department of English, Nazareth Margoschis College, and fellow teachers, young colleagues working in various institutions, the participants of this refresher course, dear research scholars, and my dear student friends, if any. Good afternoon to one and all. When the organizer approached me and asked me to deliver a lecture in this FDP, I said that I prefer a holiday so that I can be say away from my regular work and spend some fruitful, useful, meaningful time with the students and the research scholars. And it was me who rather wanted the organizer to fix me on a holiday. But I never thought this holiday has a special meaning, in the sense this is Sabbath to the Christians, and say Sunday I have more than some 40 participants attending to this program, and this day has another significance to the Hindus. That is, today we are celebrating this Kartigai Deepam. It is a light festival celebrated during this a full moon evening in the Tamil month of this Kartigai. It is right, and this is the significance of this Kartigai Deepam. We know that this is Kolkatai, say the dish that we are very much cherishing. But it is an ancient festival which is celebrated both for Lord Shiva and his son Murugan, say Kartikeyan. And lighting of the lamps forms an integral ritual of this festival. And this lighting of lamps, it has a spiritual significance, which means the wick, what we call the tiri. The wick in the lamp symbolizes our ego. The oil in the lamp that denotes our inborn nature, that cultures the ego, and flame signifies the spiritual wisdom that can inflame the ego by burning our innate behavior. So by burning our innate behavior, by burning our ego, that we become spiritual and wise on this day. Therefore, lighting the lamp at Kartigai Deepam, it represents the victory of good over the evil, the triumph of the virtue over the vices. And Kartigai Deepam, people, they light lamps in their houses to usher in prosperity and in auspiciousness in their lives, and what of that they want to do away with all kinds of negativities in their life. So we have two important days today, the day of this Kartigai and also our Sabbath. It has a meaning in my lecture on a cultural materialism. So culture has a role to play in our day-to-day lives. Some keep the Sabbath going to the church, but I attend a refresher course. But I attend a faculty development program, a perspective. Some celebrate this Kartigai Deepam with all vigor and vibrance, but I attend a FDP program today on a cultural materialism. So we rather perceive culture from various perspectives, from the perspective of religion, from the perspective of spirituality, and from the perspective of politics, from the perspective of nationalism, from the perspective of regionalism, and from the perspective of a cultural pride. But this cultural materialism, it is an expansion of Marxism. It is a leftist, right? It is a leftist culturalism. It is a leftist perspective of a culture. Hope we understand there is a difference between these perspectives, the perspective of the normal perspective of the religious perspective of a culture, the spiritual perspective of a culture, and the material perspective of a culture. I prefer to speak on the third perspective, that is the material perspective of this culture. Raymond Williams, say a well-known critic. In fact, there are two views. It was Raymond Williams who coined the term cultural materialism in 1980 in accordance with this new historicism. And again, there was another opinion even before Raymond Williams. It was Marvin Harris in 1968. In his book, The Rise of Anthropology, he has used the term cultural materialism. And we try to understand this cultural materialism only in the light of Antonio Gramsci, who has spoken on culture as a hegemony, or culture as a power that creates a structure, infrastructure, superstructure, and other things in our life. And before understanding this Antonio Gramsci, we need to understand Karl Marx to get into the Marxist views of materialism or the leftist views of economy, society, power, and its a struggle. Therefore, in my first slides that I have three images, media. Number one, it was Karl Marx. Number two, Antonio Gramsci. And number three, it is Raymond Williams. And Raymond Williams, erstwhile, he has said culture is one of the two or three most complicated words in the English language. It is not easy to understand what is this culture. Right? We started this FDP program on cultural materialism by praying to Lord to bestow, asking him to bestow all the glory on the resource persons and the participants. Number one. Number two, I said that today is Kartigay and we are celebrating this Kartigay Deepam, and this in the month of Kartigay that we are celebrating. This is another thing. And thirdly, I speak on the material aspects of I intend to speak on the material aspects of culture, how to understand culture, and what is the leftist perspective of a culture, and how Marx could be expanded to understand this cultural materialism. Okay, so we need to understand first Marx. That Marx was the first ever social thinker who spoke on the economic conditions that determine right? The economic conditions that determine the social conditions, and as an extension, the economic and social conditions that maintain and determine the religious beliefs, legal systems, and thereby the cultural expressions, we can say, are very much endowed with the economic and social conditions. Hope this is the first point that I would like to make. The economic and social conditions, it is the prosperity, it is the wealth, it is in fact the money and your social conditions. I'll come to the social conditions later. The money, the economic opulence, and the social conditions that only determine our religious beliefs, legal systems, and all our cultural expressions. If there is no money, there is no Diwali. If there is no money, there is no Christmas. It is again determined by our social condition. Art as an expression, it should not only represent such conditions truthfully, but seek to improve them. To Karl Marx, literature is a weapon, a medium that must bring changes in the society. Literature is not just the representations of a social condition. It has to rather represent, and at the same time, it seeks to improve the social conditions. So literature has a purpose. Art has a purpose. The purpose of bringing change in the social conditions. So this is my second point. Number one, I say economic and social conditions determine all our cultural expressions. And literature as a form of culture or as a cultural construct, as a cultural agent, it should rather seek to improve the social conditions. Marx, he argues that all our mental systems, what he calls ideologies, that all our systems, right, mental systems, are the products of social and economic realities. Hope this is an idea. This is a leftist perspective of ideology. Ideologies, concepts, mental systems, your perspectives are all the products of social and economic realities. Nothing more, nothing less. It is determined by your social and economic realities. My next slide, please. So ideology is nothing but that we can say ideology is an outcome of your social and economic conditions. And this historical Marx ideology is called the historical materialism. It is a methodological approach to the study of society, economics, and history. It is, in fact, a materialist conception of history. History is, we can always say, history is always written by the victors, the victorious, and not by the vanquished, not by the person who are treated to be common and ordinary. So there is a materialist conception of history. This historical materialism, it looks for the causes of developments and changes in human society. So these are the two functions of this historical materialism. Right? Say they looks for the causes of the developments and change in human society in the means of, right, in the means by which humans collectively produce the necessity of life. That what are the necessities of life? The non-economic features of a society, what we call the social classes, political structures, ideologies are seen as being an outgrowth of its economic activity. Right? Karl Marx, he rather classifies this structure into two, the society into two, the base and the superstructure. The base is rather conditioned by the produce. It is the produce of the society that conditions the base. And in order to justify the unequal distribution of the produce, we invent some superstructure. Right? Superstructures are constructed on the base in order to justify the unequal distribution of the produce. Let me explain. Right? This is a very common example that I would always try to say. Tirunelveli, the very name, right? The society, right? It is rather Tirunelveli is named after its produce, paddy, right? Paddy. Paddy is the main produce of this land, this region, and therefore this rice or the paddy, the place where the paddy is grown or grown, what we call the acres of paddy lands. It is called valley. Valley is a measurement, or you can say a kind of a fencing, right, to the paddy field. It's a measurement. It's a old Tamil measurement is called valley. And Nel Valley. And to Nel Valley, say to the paddy fencing, or what we call to the paddy, the acres and acres of this paddy land, we give a honorific prefix. And we call this paddy land Thiru, holy, something honorable. But with an honor, we call it Tirunelveli. The god of this land is called Nellai Appar. So, to understand the culture, to understand the social conditions, we need to first understand the importance of the produce of the society, the economic factors of the society. Since this place, this region is full of a paddy, rice, the god is Nillayapar, and the society is basically an agrarian society. As an agrarian society, Tirunelveli constructs its own strata, its own social strata, its own superstructure. This region has a superstructure. This region has a specific religious, communal superstructures, social structures. And all these structures, ideologies are based only on the economic conditions and what we call the produce of the region. And therefore, we can say the non-economic features of a society, for example, the social classes, the working class, the capitalist class, right, and the middle class, and we have got say in India we have got a very specific a class or a caste system. It is all based only on economic conditions. Political structures, ideologies are seen as being, it's an extension, an offshoot, an outgrowth of the economic activity. My next slide, please. And thirdly, Karl Marx, he speaks on the consciousness of men. That the consciousness, it is the, right, it is what we call the basis, right, the basis for the construction of one's, right, the construction of one's ideological profile, the construction of one's perspective. The mode of production of this material life, it conditions the general process of social, political, and intellectual life. So this is the basis, right? And at least I want the participants to remember this particular point. The mode of production of material life conditions the material life conditions the general process of social, political, and intellectual life. So production of material life is equal to the process of social, political, and intellectual life. It is not the consciousness of men that determines their existence, but their social existence that determines their consciousness. Tirunelveli people have a specific social consciousness. This consciousness of Tuticorin is different from the consciousness of Virudhunagar. The consciousness of Virudhunagar is different from the consciousness of Coimbatore. And Coimbatore is different from the consciousness of Chennai. Chennai is different from Delhi. Delhi is different from Bombay. Bombay is different from Calcutta, because the social existence in that province, region, class, that determines the consciousness of men. It is so. It is very simple, but this is it is not the man's ideology that determines the social ideology. It is the social ideology that determines the man's ideology. The individual is very much influenced by the society, and the society is conditioned. Right? The society is conditioned by the produce. And I told you about the superstructure. The super up to base that we have no problem, and only when man invents superstructure, and I said superstructures are invented, constructed only to justify the unequal distribution of the social excess. We have social excess. There is a lot of produce, and we don't want to rather distribute it equally to all, and therefore, in the name of religion, it's a superstructure. In the name of philosophy, it's a superstructure. In the name of law, a superstructure. Governance, superstructure. Administration, a superstructure. Literature, superstructure. We justify our unequal distribution. In the name of God, that we justify our unequal distribution. In the name of religion, in the name of law, in the name of class, in the name of caste, we justify our unequal distribution. So all these superstructures are very much exploitative in nature. But what is the base? Base is the economical base, and the superstructure is an invention of a human being. Only it is an invention, and it is not an invention to have. It is kind of an exploitative invention. So this is what Karl Marx says. The social conditions determines the human condition. Then what is the production and social consciousness? That is in my next slide, please. But the production and social consciousness. My next slide, please. At one extreme, it might be argued that all our social, political, and cultural life can be read off from the relations of production. I have given an example, right? How the produce paddy creates a kind of a regional culture in Tirunelveli, kind of a religious economic essentialism in Tirunelveli. How does it create a kind of a spirituality in Tirunelveli? Right? And the god is named after paddy, and we can also say it is the god who rather blesses the region with a paddy. It can be both ways, but only based on the produce that we celebrate, we create a culture. And it might be argued that all social, political, and cultural life can be read off from the relations of production, that the social consciousness of an individual is determined by his or her position in the economic structure. Her position in the economic structure in the social structure. I would say one can easily understand the discriminations, like the gender discrimination, the caste discrimination, the religious discrimination. And how do you develop a social consciousness? And the social consciousness is very much determined by one's position in the economic structure. Such a view challenges the notion of free will, and individuals' autonomy has been criticized accordingly. Now we come to the interrelatedness between the production and the social consciousness. I mean, I try to explain all these things because I want to emphasize the fact that this lecture tries to perceive culture not from the religious, not from the spiritual, not from any other perspective, but it tries to perceive culture only from the leftist perspective, from the Marxist perspective, from the perspective of Antonio Gramsci and from the perspective of Raymond Williams. Right? This is a leftist culturalism. Okay. Alternatively, the relations of the production could be seen merely as a constraining factor in the development of the superstructure. I told you about the functions of the superstructure, defining no more than the broad parameters to which the superstructure and the individual consciousness will loosely correspond. I said law is a superstructure. So your individual consciousness, it will loosely correspond with the law. Your individual consciousness will loosely correspond with your religion. And that is why that we say, even on the Sabbath, that we are working. Okay, so it will loosely correspond. It is loosely correspond with our superstructure. But religion is a superstructure, and anybody who rather or anyone who has a very strong belief in Christianity, would rather oppose to the fact that we have classes on a Sunday. I will come to that when I explain Raymond Williams and his cultural materialism. Okay, so I try to say the individual consciousness will definitely loosely correspond with the superstructure. Right? I say I just want you to remember religion is a superstructure, law is a superstructure, education is a superstructure, even your literature, philosophy, ideology, everything is a superstructure. It is created only to justify the domination, only to justify the discrimination, only to justify the exploitation of the disadvantaged people. So production and social consciousness, we call it economic determinism. This is what Karl Marx and all the leftist socialist thinkers have given to the world. A philosophical and a theoretical position most commonly associated with Marxist assertion that all social phenomena have their roots in the relations of production. At least remember this. This is the key term, the key ideology. All social phenomena have their roots in the relations of production. I said, Tuticorin is an industrial city. Tirunelveli is an agrarian city. Coimbatore is an industrial city. Chennai is a cosmopolitan city. And Ooty, the social consciousness is purely based on the tea. And Tuticorin, salt. Tirunelveli, paddy. Coimbatore, cotton. So the social phenomenon have their roots in the relations of production. And we have a cotton soil. The soil is called cotton soil, Karisal. Right from Kayathar to Theni. Right from this Kayathar, from Kayathar to Ramanathapuram, say Sangaran Govil, Kayathar, Ramanathapuram, Madurai, and other places is known as cotton soil. What we call this Karisal land. So according to Karl Marx, the relations of production constitute the base upon which a legal and political structure rests. So this is the point. Only on the relations of production that constitutes the base. Or to say, if all the participants are from Tamil Nadu, I would like to rather say it in Tamil, what we call it Adipadai and Samuha Niruvanangal. Superstructure. At base and the superstructure. Superstructures are legal and political. They also structure social relations between classes, producing corresponding forms of social consciousness. A social class, a working class, a coolie, a zamin, andan, adimai, the rich, the poor, the worker, the capitalist, the landless laborers, and the landlords. So all these things, right, they are social structures. These relations between classes producing the corresponding forms of the social consciousness. That the social consciousness, we could say, the consciousness of a coolie, the consciousness of a landlord, the social consciousness of a landless laborer, the social consciousness of Jamin, the social consciousness of the assurers, the social consciousness of the moneylenders, the social consciousness of the borrowers. So all these things, we can identify the social relations between classes. And Marx, he puts it, the mode of production of material life, again, I reiterate the point, the mode of production of material life conditions the social, political, and intellectual life process in general. We call someone Madumechi. When bulls are replaced with tractors, we don't call anybody tractor mechi. To plow, the plowman, right? The plowman plots his, right? The plowman the plowman homeward plots his weird way. Thomas Gray, elegy written in country churchyard. Right? And the plowman has a specific social consciousness. And the landlord has a specific social consciousness. Politically, that you can rather hear think about any text that you have read on regional literature, the films that you have seen, right? The films, any film for that matter, which represents the social structure, the conditions, the social conditions, just like what we can say Asuran, or we can say Karnan, we can say Pariyerum Perumal, or the old, right, the old good films, right, like Vandikaran, right, Vandikaran Mahan. So these kind of films, Vivasayi by MGR, Toliladi, Tirudade, right, and all these films, the books that you have read, they try to rather represent the social conditions, but seeking to improve them, seeking to improve the social condition. So this is economic determinism by Karl Marx. Now we are changing the gear. It was the first gear. It was Karl Marx. He called it Porul Mudal Vadam. Porul Mudal Vadam. Porulai Adipadayaga Konda Mudal Vadam. What he calls economic, historical, historical materialism. Varalaatru Mudal Vadam. And it foregrounds the produce. It foregrounds the economical status of this society. And he considers the produce constructs, maintains, determines, and of course executes social conditions, social classes, consciousness, ideologies. And from the produce, now we say it is not just the produce, it is not just the power over the produce that rather exploits people. It is not just the money, it is not just the produce, something else. By 1930s, It was Antonio Gramsci, an Italian social thinker and a post-Marxist, and he was a leader of the leftist party in Italy. And say in Italy, there was a labor struggle against the administration, and the struggle miserably failed. All the laborers from the working class, from the proletariat, they were fighting for their wages against the government, against the authorities. But quite haplessly, the struggle, the strike, it failed. And when Antonio Gramsci analyzed, he found that it was the cultural divisions among the proletariats. It was the cultural notions among the proletariats that divided the proletariats, and the strike met with a failure. And this is again a strategy in the post-war. Marx has an ideology. He called it economic determinism. So the second gear, I would say, there is a shift. There is a paradigm shift from Marx to Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci identified culture is autonomous, and culture is an exploitative strategy more than the material, more than this produce. And he called it a cultural materialism, where he foregrounds culture first, right? And it is very easy to understand, right? Say what will culture do, or what will this or the fake or the blotted religious sentiments would do. That we have seen in right, say we have come across in the newspapers. We have seen there are two important struggles in Tirunelveli districts. One, the Kudangulam issue, and another one, say in Tuticorin against the sterilite. In both the issues were rather diverted, infusing the religious sentiments into it. So it was identified not as a struggle for the local cause. It was identified cleverly by the exploiters, cleverly by those who are enjoying the political, right, the political social power, the political, social, and of course, financial power. They try to divert the issues, calling it, calling them by a different name. Say that we have come across, right? We have come across a lot of news items in the newspaper those days, and say we are in fact even not right. We are in fact not ready even to discuss that. So Antonio Gramsci identified it is not just the material prosperity. It is the cultural, what we call sentiments, dominance, superiority. But the cultural divisions among the people might also lead to, say, discrimination. And cultural materialism, it is a literary theory, and cultural studies traces its origin to the work of the left-wing literary critic Raymond Williams. Cultural materialism makes an analysis based in critical theory in the tradition of Frankfurt School. If someone wants to know more about critical theory, right, they must begin only from the Frankfurt School. Right, it is the Frankfurt School, it is the creation or the revisit of the old school of thought. They revisited the old school of thought and understood quite comprehensively and created a new theory. And only from the Frankfurt School of Thought, we had this up to 19, say till 1950, the ideology of the West, or the ideology of the Europe especially, was linguistic intent. They gave importance only to linguistic perspective of life. I mean, structuralism, post-structuralism, and other things. And it was formalism, Russian formalism, Russian formalism, structuralism, post-structuralism, and other things, right, till 1950. After the Second World War, the world turned cultural, and it was rather a cultural domination. And I will explain the cultural domination, and most of the political parties nowadays across the world are rather religiously oriented. And even in the United States of America, there is a dominant group, that there is a very culturally, religiously powerful group which is called WASP, WASP, and they call it this is the most dominant group in the United States, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. And we have the Jewish influence, domination. We have many examples like this. So cultural materialism as a theoretical movement in the early 1980s, along with new historicism, which problematizes history, which perceives history from the perspective of, or from the perspective below, from the below, it shares a much common ground. Cultural materialism shares a common ground with new historicism. The term was coined by Raymond Williams, who uses it to describe a theoretical blending of leftist culturalism and Marxist analysis. So, cultural materialism is a leftist culturalism and a Marxist analysis which deals with a specific historical document and analyzes the spirit of the age of a particular moment in history. The spirit of the age and a particular moment in the history. Every age has a spirit. The spirit of Renaissance, it was all right. The spirit of Renaissance was enlightenment and enjoyment, entertainment and enjoyment, enlightenment, entertainment and enlightenment. The spirit of Puritan, we have, it's all a Protestant and Puritanism. The spirit of Restoration is known for its free thinking, free will, satire. The spirit of Romanticism and individual's imagination. The spirit of Victorian age, a conflict between science and religion. The spirit of modern age, it is the void in a human culture. The spirit of postmodern age, the celebration of nothingness, the celebration of meaninglessness in our life. And the spirit of the global era, we call it Brexit. We call it Brexit, and we call this spirit of this global or post-global scenario is post-truth world. So every age has a spirit, and history has to be understood with the spirit of the age. And Shakespeare needs to be understood with the spirit of the age, with his enlightenment and entertainment. Of course, his modern day relevance can be understood with the contemporary political ideology. So culture is now we are making this culture as we are considering culture as a productive process. It is not just the economy, and from economy that we move to a culture. It is economical determinism. It is an economical perspective of the social conditions, and from economical perspective of the social conditions, now there is a shift. We consider these social conditions from a cultural perspective. So culture is a productive process. It very often identifies that there are three cultures: residual, emergent, and oppositional in cultural elements. But in cultural elements, we call it in the elements of domination. Any culture tries to dominate over the other culture. That culture is a canopy term. It's an umbrella term. I consider, right, and we can very well include philosophy, religion, governance, law, everything, even your code of conduct, your day to day.
Type it. Sir, you're not audible.
So kindly unmute your mobile, sir. So you mute yourself, I think. Sir, excuse me, sir. Your voice is not audible, sir. sir. Hello, sir. Sir, kindly unmute yourself, sir. Hello.
Thank you, please.
Sir, we are able to view you now. Sir, we are not able to listen to you, sir.
கேக்குதா?
கேக்குது sir. Clear sir.
கொஞ்சம் வெயிட் பண்ணுங்க, நான் என்னோட ஹெட்போனை மாத்திக்கிறேன் ஒரு செகண்ட். அப்போ தமிழ்நாடு பரிகாரம் Hello, கேக்குதா? Hello, could you hear me now?
Yeah, sir, audible, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, I hope you could hear me now clearly.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. So I was talking about the residual and emergent culture in this cultural materialism. And this residual, we can call it the influence of the old culture, and emergent is going against the dominant culture. And I'm going through the chat. Hope okay, you are all talking about. Say you can also post your queries if you have any, so that I can answer. Okay. So these cultural materialists, they analyze the process by which The hegemonic forces in society appropriate canonical or historically important text. By text, that we don't just mean the literary text, all the text, even the scripture, all our holy text, that can be rather analyzed with the hegemonic forces operating, that can be analyzed and found out the hegemonic forces operating inside the text, how a power structure is working on, and how the structure of domination, the structure of discrimination working on in this text. And we call it is canonical and historically important text. And it was Jonathan Talimo, Alan Sinfield, at the Political Shakespeare, and have identified 4 defining characteristics of cultural materialism as a theoretical device. And say in the meantime that we have in 1964, the Richard Hogarth's, the Birmingham Center for Cultural Studies. It was established in 1964, and it was Richard Hogarth, Stuart Hall, Anthony Hopkins, and they were all working. They were all working on the cultural materialism, and that school of thought was called cultural studies. And Raymond Williams, a follower of this cultural studies, he rather identified or he rather proposed a new concept, this cultural materialism. So cultural studies, cultural materialism, new historicism, these three words cannot be interchanged, but at the same time, all the three, they perceive culture only from the leftist perspective. Okay. So the historical context, the close textual analysis, political commitment, and theoretical method. These are the four. Components of the cultural materialism. Historical context. It can be defined as the political, social, cultural, and economic environment related to historical moments, events, and trends. Historical artifacts and sources were created within particular worlds, and they are tied to the political, social, and economic conditions of those worlds. But we can simply say all our historical texts, right? The recent text where we come across in our regional languages, and of course in the grass is singing, and there is a recent text on Martin Luther King, Oliver Cromwell, right? Oliver Cromwell, and these or rather they are trying to revisit the historical context. Right? Any historical context has a political, social, cultural, and economic environment. But nowadays that we say even climate is a history. But history has to be rather approached with smaller incidents. And historical artifacts and sources were created within a particular world and are tied to the political, social, and economic conditions of those worlds. And say even we can simply say the Tamil history. When we are talking about Tamil history, we are glorifying, say, with much fanfare attitude about the Chola dynasty. And but Tamil, it is not very. It is also the Pandya kingdom is also there, and there is that it is when we talk about the Chola and the Pandya kingdoms. I still believe this there is a kind of there is a kind of over glorification of the Chola dynasty and a kind of an ignorance of this Pandya, which the historians must say. This is only a notion. Right? Mine is only a notion, and any new historicist who perceive this text would say, or rather understand. The context, a historical context, is an essential part of literary text. Literature is not created in vacuum. Literature has a context. The context is historical. In the text, either we are contextualizing history or historicizing a context. A context is an essential part of a literary text. I hope that there is a difference between work and text. The work is author-centered, text is reader-centered. Text, work, we can say from the author's perspective, and there is always a condescending attitude that author is a creator. But in the text, it is reader-centric. It is understanding of a text. It is the working of a text. It is what we arrive at a text, which helps us to engage the audience and understand the cultural, social, philosophical, and political ideas and movements prevalent in that specific society at the time of writing. But what was there at the time of writing? This was the historical context. To understand literature, one need to understand the historical context. And the second is textual analysis. And this is Stuart Hall. A text is something that we make meaning from. Stuart Hall. What is a text? What I make a meaning from. Macbeth, Hamlet, Othello, Merchant of Venice, Paradise Lost, Pilgrim's Progress, Tithonus, The Lotus Eaters, Oliver Twist, all text that I intend to make meaning from. So this is the historical context. History is intertwined with a text. Textual analysis, text is something that we make meaning from, or what we call the positionality, the politics of signification. There is an essay by Stuart Hall, How Meanings Are Arrived At. He calls it a signification, the politics of signification. And no knowledge is neutral. No, so this is cultural sticks. No knowledge is neutral. No knowledge is objective. Everything is positional. We take a position, and only from the position that we perceive a text and we comprehend a text and we arrive at a meaning. A textual analysis on a text, we make an educated guess at some of the most likely interpretations that might be made of the text. But what is a textual analysis in this cultural perspective? It is only an educated guess at some of the most likely interpretations that might be made of the text. So the first, as Jonathan Tollimore and Alan Sinfield identified the four characteristics of cultural materialism. The first one is historical context. The second one is a close textual analysis. And the third one, my next slide, it is, I would say that this is a political epistemology. This textual analysis is a political epistemology which considers the production of knowledge a political practice and asserts that knowledge is never neutral or an objective phenomenon but a matter of positionality of the place from which one perceives and speaks. Okay. The third, right, this is the political commitment. And how do you understand? Right? How do you understand a text? And what is your politics? What is your politics? Both in the electoral and social politics. The politics of a woman. I perceive the text from a gender, right? From a perspective of a woman. I consider this as from a perspective of a working class, from a perspective of a disadvantaged person, from a perspective of a superior, that one who from a condescending perspective. So no knowledge is neutral. The third context that the third characteristics that cultural materialism talks about what is your politics? What is your political commitment? And the fourth, it is a theoretical movement. That theory, but by theory, that I don't mean anything. A theory is rather, we can simply say it is a generalized perception or a generalized, rationalized perceptions of individuals. It is a contemporary belief system. It is very much that a theory is very much empirical, that it is constructed against chaos to understand an experience or a text. This can be a social experience, or that can be a literary text. And if you have an empirical practice to understand a literary text, the empirical practice is called a literary theory. And a social experience, it is called a critical theory. Okay. So it is a theoretical perspective, cultural materialism, as a theoretical movement, it valorizes the art form. How does it valorize art form? Say this Marxist literary theory, particularly the Gramscian concept of hegemony, the cultural assault or the cultural bulldozing, the cultural domination by one group over the other. It contributes a lot to the cultural studies in Britain. As I said in the beginning, Raymond Williams, Richard Hogarth, E.P. Thompson, they seek to recover and explore the popular working class culture. But what is undercurrent politics of this leftist culturalism? Leftist culturalism is a social culturalism. A social culturalism that rather seeks to introduce the working class culture, the culture of the commoners, the culture of the proletariats, which were once considered inferior, low, and not having any standard. Even today, that we have a controversy about the status of a language. Someone said that I don't speak this language. So language has its own status. And this cultural materialism, cultural studies, and new historicism, they try to foreground the culture of the ordinary, the culture of the working class by reading history from below. Encounter and encourage the culture of the marginalized. So these are the functions and objectives of cultural materialism. The recovery of the lost voice. Reading history from below. Encounter and encourage the culture of the marginalized. The function, the characteristics. While culture critic, there are two kinds of culture, what we call metaculture and ordinary culture. That we have all culture which are rather in a way superiorized, or we call it supremacist culture. I told you about WASP. I told you about, say, many, even in Europe, many national parties were religiously oriented. And every culture has a supremacist tendency. That is why Edward said, culture excludes. So this is another perspective, a perspective of post-colonial critique. If you give importance, if you are talking much about your culture, it only excludes. The culture, it excludes. When you call yourself an Indian, that you are excluded. When you call yourself an American, that you are excluded from the rest. When you call yourself a Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jew, Buddhist, Catholic, Protestant, and others, they are trying to exclude us. So this is Edward saying, culture excludes. And so this culture, as a recovery, as a reading of history, as an encounter of the marginalized, it valorizes the low art form. That there are two kinds of art form, high art and the low art. The position taken by the culture critic and the quasi-populist are not antithetical as they appear to be, but they both seek to earn a deserving place for the distinctive culture of the particular people. But what do we mean by the popular culture? Popular culture is not identified with its familiarity, but popular has it, and popular is an adjective, which means the people, the populist. And the modern day meaning is familiarity, how famous it is. So by popular culture, we mean only the culture of the people. And there is nothing called high and low art form. Cultural critics disapproves the deliberate connection of the study of the high culture, and they try to encourage, or they try to establish that popular culture is literary. Here, Raymond Williams, he argues that Marxism makes where are you in the slides? 15. Slide number 13, a cultural valorization of art form. Oh, I didn't say next. I'm sorry. Valorization of. I'm talking about the valorization of art form. That if you want to go back, I'll just sum up the previous slides in one or two sentences. That I talked about the four characteristics. The previous one was a historical context. The second one is textual analysis, and the third characteristics of this cultural materialism is its political epistemology, and what we call the politics of signification. And the fourth concept is as a theory. By theory, that I said, this is a conceptualization of culture. How culture is conceptualized, how cultural materialism is rather made as an ideology. Theory, it provides us a tool to understand. I said theory is a generalized perception, a rationalized perception of individuals. Okay, from then I am coming to this valorization of art form, where I talked about the high and low art form. Those who believe in this meta culture, they consider canonical or high art form, and this cultural studies encourages to consider this popular culture is more literary, and the modern cultural theorists and practitioners including Nicholas Graham, Jonathan Talimo, Alan Sinfield, Terry Eagleton, of course, Stephen Greenblatt, Stuart Hall, Lawrence Grassworth, and Graham Turner. They all speak for the low, we should not say the low, but mass culture and mass literature. And only these are all media persons. Stuart Hall, Talimo, right, Sinfield, Jerry Gilton, and even in media, these theories are used. And now, only now that we have news about the farmers, about the working class, about their problems. Earlier, it was not fit to be considered a news. It was not fit to be considered a song. It was not fit to be considered a music. It was not fit to be considered a lyric, a poem, or a play. Naladangal is still, we call it a folklore. Okay, so this kind of valorization of art form. So what do the cultural, my next slide. Do I have any more slide there? No, okay, you just listen to me. I will share this slide. What do these cultural materialists do? They read the literary text in such a way so as to enable us to recover its histories. What does cultural materialists doing? What do? They read the literary text in such a way to enable us to recover its histories. That is, the context of exploitation from which it emerged. Okay. From the context of exploitation from which it emerged. For example, in Merchant of Venice, a Jew, the portrait of the Jew as avarice, a person of avarice, a person who has no integrity, expresses the Christian perspective of a Jew. That is a criticism. In Othello, is called Moor, a white perspective of a black. Othello is reread in the context of racism prevalent during Renaissance. So from the context of exploitation from which it emerged, history can be recovered. Literature is a parallel history. We can understand the historicity of a text. Foregrounding these elements in the work's present transmission and contextualizing which caused those histories to be lost in the first place. Okay. Even Canterbury Tales is the historical documentation. The friar, the nun, the priest, and the lady. The stories, all the stories have different class, conditions, and social consciousness. These cultural materials, secondly, they use a combination of Marxist and feminist approaches to the text in order to fracture the previous dominance of a conservative social, political, and religious assumptions. Cultural materialist reading of literature question and problematize the conservative social, political, and religious assumptions. They challenge. Number 3, these cultural materialist reading exercise or engages in close textual analysis, especially to mark a break with the inherited tradition. So we can simply say cultural materialism is an avant-garde a concept, oppositional, emergent, protest, radical, questions, problematizes, recreates, recovers, reclaims the identity of the erstwhile disadvantaged people or the present working class. They work mainly with the traditional notions of the canon because writing about more obscure texts hardly ever constitute an effective political intervention. Right? So this is a mischievous kind of reading. They always go to the most traditional notion of a canon and they will decanonize it because you call any canonical text that can be subverted, right? Because it is more obscure. They are conservative, political, made only on religious assumptions and beliefs, and therefore these obscurities can be easily exposed. And this cultural materialism or cultural materialist, right, the reading, the kind of a reading, have these four concepts. Number one, enable us to recover its histories from the context. Number two, it uses a Marxist and feminist approach to the text in order to fracture the previous dominance of conservative social, political, and religious assumptions. Number three, a close textual analysis, especially to mark break with the inherited tradition. Number four, it works on the most canonical text, traditional canonical text, in order to expose its obscurity. And it is a political intervention of the canonical text. There is a case study made, we can take Othello, and this Othello, we can have a cultural materialist reading, and we can decipher, decode the racism, Iago's villainy is called as the motiveless malignity of an individual, and this motiveless malignity of Iago can easily be identified with his racist supremacy. And we do have motiveless malignity in terms of casteism. So this reading is quite interrogative. So Othello can be read as a text which has all obscure conservative political ideologies of race. Iago is an embodiment of racist supremacy, and his motiveless malignity is nothing but racist supremacy. Number two, the love and the marriage between Othello and Desdemona, that can also be rather that some messages are encrypted by Shakespeare, a Renaissance dramatist. He infuses only the Renaissance ideology in Othello, and this could be even what we call misogyny. They don't accept any marital relationship between, or the mixture of blood, what we call it, because sexual purity is always maintained in racism and casteism. In racism, it is Othello an example. In casteism, we have honor killing. We can very well understand this as a political ideology. Okay, so in cultural materialism, the key text available to understand a cultural materialism is Culture is Ordinary. This is by Raymond Williams. He proclaims that culture is ordinary. And James I and the Politics of Literature. Done and their contemporaries by Jonathan Goldberg, Renaissance self-fashioning and Shakespearean negotiations by Stephen Greenblatt, faultiness, cultural materialism and the politics of dissident reading by Alan Sinfield, the most popular text, The Political Shakespeare, essays, new essays in cultural materialism, edited by Jonathan Dallimore and Alan Sinfield. These texts, they revisit. So cultural materialism as a literary exercise, revisit the text with a historical notion, with a new historical notion, and recover all the exploitative politics encrypted in the text with the aim to improve the social conditions. So dear friends, throughout my lecture, I introduced three ideologues, Karl Marx, to make a point. He perceives art is not just a representation of social conditions. Art seeks to improve the social conditions. He talked about the historical materialism, and I have explained what is the social consciousness, what is individual consciousness, what is social consciousness, and how this consciousness of men makes the production and the society, how the production and what is the interrelatedness of the social and the production of the consciousness. I have also explained what is economic determinism. Then from economic determinism, we understand what is the social structure, how economic structures are constructed. And this is part A. That is, society is economically oriented. This is Marx. Number two, I introduced Antonio Gramsci and his concept of hegemony, that is a cultural domination over another person or another society or culture. And from Antonio Gramsci, we move to Raymond Williams and his concept of cultural materialism and culture as a productive process. And this cultural materialism has four characteristics. There are three kinds of culture: residual, emergent, and oppositional. Then cultural materialism has four characteristics: the historical context, close textual analysis, political commitment, and as a theoretical method. I have explained what is this historical context, saying that every text has a historical context. Then this textual analysis, I meant text is something that we make meaning from. And for the political commitment, reading or writing is a political epistemology. And fourth, we have said that this cultural studies encourages popular culture and popular art form. It provides a theoretical background to establish this popular culture or popular art as or rather as far craves for the space that it deserves. And finally, these two slides that I have not shown, but I'll share it after this. What cultural materialists are doing here in our literature, or how it can be done, this as a theory, how it can be rather used to understand a text, right? That is, reading a literary text with an aim to recover its history. Secondly, it is Marxist and feminist perspective or approaches. We can also include post-colonialist perspective here. And 3, the close textual analysis to subvert all the inherited traditions of the supremacist or conservative people. Finally, it breaks all the traditional notions of the canon, and they, cultural materialists, they prefer to work morely on, but they prefer to work more on this obscure canonical text because they consider the political intervention will be more here in the canonical text. And as a case study, I said the motiveless malignity of Iago is nothing but he couldn't rather explain his racist hatred or his racial hatred in public, and therefore Shakespeare defines it as a motiveless malignity, or the conservative criticism claims it motiveless malignity, but in reality it is racist supremacy or the racist sentiments existing during this period. With this, dear friends, I have just given an example of, this is not any, that I have given say an example of a theory. I have provided a theory. I don't claim that this is the theory or the best tool to understand a text. I don't claim so. It is one of the ways to interpret literature. And cultural materialism also provides a tool to interpret literature. It is not elitist perspective of literature. It is not a religious perspective of literature. It is not a spiritual perspective of literature. It is a common man's perspective of literature, one who is craving for equity, social justice, and space in the mainstream culture. With this, thank you very much. I thank you, the organizer, and the participants for your patient listen. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening us with your wonderful speech, and we are very grateful for your contribution in making this day a memorable one. Sir, your exceptional orchestration and this pivotal segment, we could ever remember it, sir. And we are nearing the end of the session, and I would like to invite Ms. Esa Salmon Golda to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone, to the one and all present here. On behalf of the 7D National Level Online FDP, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude and to everyone who has made the event possible. First and foremost, I would like to thank our esteemed college principal, Mr. B. Jawahar Sambre, for his constant support and guidance throughout the program. A big thank you also goes to our college secretary, Mr. S. Kumar Raj Singh, for his valuable contributions. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation to our esteemed resource person, Dr. S. Prabhakar, for his enlightening speech on cultural materialism. His insights have truly enriched our understanding. Special thanks to the organizing committee and the technical team for their hard work and dedication in enriching in ensuring the smooth running of this program. I would like to extend a special thank you to the convener of this program, Dr. Beulah Hemalata, for her exceptional efforts in organizing and coordinating this event. Her dedication and hard work has truly made this faculty development program a success. I would like to express my gratitude to the coordinator, Dr. J. Mary Stella, for her valuable contributions and support throughout the program. Her expertise and guidance have been invaluable. A big thank you to the organizing secretary, Mr. T. Jude Livingston, for his meticulous planning and coordination. His attention to detail has ensured that everything runs smoothly. I would also like to express gratitude to all the individuals who contributed their valuable speeches, including Mrs. J. Rajkamal Petro for the prayer, Dr. J. Meristala for the Bible reading, Dr. M. Biola Hemalata for the welcome address, and Mr. J. Alagesh for introducing the chief guest. Thanks to Mrs. J. Christy Lydia Jansi for her excellent comparing skills as well. Last but not least, I want to thank all the participants for their active involvement and enthusiasm throughout the program. Your presence has made this event truly memorable. Once again, thank you all for your contributions and support. Let's continue to make the remaining days of the faculty development program even more enriching and inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Golda, for extending the heartfelt appreciation and eloquent words of compliment. Once again, we thank the coordinators of everyone in making this event a memorable experience for all. All your contribution is truly valued. Thank you, one and all. Finally, we shall meet one thing to share you. We shall meet again on tomorrow's session for the 5th day, session 1 at 10 a.m. Thank you.